You are listening to X-Wing Radio.
Welcome back, you wretched hive of scum and villainy. I'm David, that's Wesley, and you just tuned in to X-Wing Radio, your weekly broadcast from a galaxy far, far away.
Kind of like that idea of us, being, um, being like the radio show that people listen to, like on Tatooine, and we're sitting here like, you know, Richard Hyde and villainy. Anyways, um, you're lucky, David. I actually thought of something to say other than, yep, this week, as opposed to like last week or the week before that. I don't remember.
Well, and you,
I don't
you
remember.
actually came up with what we're talking about today, so why don't you go ahead and enlighten us?
Okay, so no specific rhyme or reason that we're talking about this. The biggest thing, reasoning I want to talk about the character who we're going to discuss today. If you've clicked on this video, you know who we're talking about. But we're talking about Grogu, Baby Yoda,
hmm
uh,
hmm
green guy from the Mandalorian. What do they call them? It's what are the little space aliens from Toy Story?
Um, I
Do they
don't
have a
remember
name?
if there is a name for them.
Okay, well, anyways, that was the first name thing that came to mind in my mind. But anyways, we're talking about Grogu. The reason that I want to talk about Grogu is because currently within what we're talking about with the books specifically, and what I've been listening to, because these books take a long time to read through, so we have a lot of prep beforehand, um, has been based after Return of the Jedi. Grogu is a character that we have been introduced to post Return of the Jedi. So that's kind of my line of thinking. Also, who doesn't love Grogu? We talked about Yoda a couple months ago on the podcast, maybe close to a year now.
And
And
of course, we found out some interesting things about Yoda. That he's in fact from Naboo. He has 4 fingers. He's a midget. There's
a midget humanoid specifically.
midget humanoid. Yeah,
Um, yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things with it, but Grogu has been Grogu's everywhere. But anyways, to stay on topic, Grogu, who for the longest time was referred to as Baby Yoda, because what else were we gonna call him? We don't have a name for the species. We still don't have a name for the species, which is an interesting thing. Like George Lucas, there was a time, and David, I don't know if you remember hearing this story, but there was a time that someone came to George Lucas with a whole entire backstory for Yoda, a species, a planet, like a whole list of things for Yoda. And George Lucas was like, "No, I don't want that. I want there to be a lot of mystery surrounding Yoda." So I
he's a
kind of find
mystery
it interesting.
character.
Like he's a mystery character, and that's the thing. Like we wonder so much about Yoda, and their answers that as long as George Lucas gets his way moving forward, we will never get answered. So it's just interesting to
hmm
me. Um. So obviously, as mentioned a minute ago, Grogu is a character from The Mandalorian. Pretty much, he is the plot in The Mandalorian, at least season one. If we're gonna be honest, like
Season one
there's
and
other
season two.
things, yeah, like yeah. So you know, I don't know, David. You wanna talk a little bit about Mandalorian season one and two? I feel like you have either watched it more than I did, or remember it better than I did. I've seen it and I've watched it. I liked it, but I haven't gone back that many times to refresh my memory on it.
Well,
I feel like you have a little bit better memory about it. So talk a little bit about the Mandalorian and like I guess his the significant role that Grogu plays in that show, because obviously he does. He's a staple of the show. David, say something. Obviously, you just can't just sit there with your mouth wide open. Okay, your mouth is closed. You can't just sit there with your mouth closed all day and expect some words to come out. I mean, like, it's like you can't get a word in edgewise. I'll shut up.
Okay. So, yeah, the Mandalorian, the season one of the Mandalorian is basically, well, you know, Din Djarin's hired to uh basically steal Baby Yoda from these I don't know, they weren't wasn't really clear, like slavers
Pirates.
or whatever, pirates, whatever. Anyway,
I think they were
basically,
pirates. I think I even weren't they the same type species that the pirates are in the Hondu's gang?
I think so, yeah.
So I think they were pirates. But anyways, continue.
Okay. Yeah, so he was hired to again basically steal Grogu from or the child from these pirates,
To be fair,
not knowing that it was a an infant. I mean, granted, he's 50 years old, but he's still an infant.
50-year-old infant.
Well, because I think he was in season episode one. He was told that the target was 50 years old, so that's why the reveal that it's a baby at the end of the episode is kind of the kind of a big deal. Anyway, so season one is basically trying to make sure Grogu is safe throughout this whole story arc because he ends up not turning uh Grogu into the Imperial Remnant, who are the ones who hired him. They end up getting Grogu anyway, and he has to save Grogu. And then in season two, it's about basically finding another Jedi to you know get Grogu back with his people.
Yeah. Um, which
Now,
doesn't end up happening because Grogu chooses Mandalorian over
mm,
the Jedi.
yeah, yeah, it is interesting. It's an interesting thing to think about the fact that just the way the Mandalorians have been shown to behave, that it's with the foundlings and stuff. Obviously you go back um to like the Clone Wars, and the Mandalorians were pretty much just it was a by blood thing. You were born a Mandalorian,
Yeah.
but the according to like the old ways, like with Jango Fett, who was a foundling, and Din Djarin, who was a foundling. You know, basically anyone taken in by the Mandalorians and who adopts their ways is a Mandalorian.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is an
And
interesting side. Like
it's an
there's a
interesting
lot.
comparison. Well, what I was about to say is it's an interesting comparison to the Jedi Order, where it's
Hmm.
not where in pretty much every other Star Wars show or movie or whatever, you don't really think of the Jedi as being a people, like a people group, even though they technically are.
They're cult.
Because sure, but, like oh yeah, there's a Wookiee Jedi. There's a ton of human Jedis. There's a Twi'lek Jedi. We typically separate those out more, and maybe it's because every Mandalorian we've seen, other than Grogu, has been human. But
Yeah.
it's just interesting to you know, because in the Mandalorian, it's almost like you know, Din talks about finding his people, like the Jedi are like an ethnic group.
Mm.
Which I would argue the Mandalorians, even though there are like foundlings and stuff, the Mandalorians are still more of an ethnic group than you know like
Well, I mean, while they are like there's a planet Mandalore, and people from
yeah.
Mandalore are Mandalorians. there also is the Kree of being a Mandalorian, which is where you got the foundlings coming in and
Yeah.
people within that line of thinking. So yeah, I mean, it is still like all season three wasn't the best. Maybe season three wasn't the best because they didn't follow Grogu. I don't know, but um, they focused a lot on reestablishing Mandalore, and you know, there was that was them trying to reclaim their home, even though not necessarily all of them were pure blood Mandalorian. They were
Mm.
Mandalorian by beliefs. I mean, they even talk
Well,
about a lot
and
of that with it kind of being somewhat of a religion.
mhm. And of course, the Mandalorian season 3, it made the atrocious decision of destroying a thousands of year old relic, you know, when it should have
So
been Grogu's.
yeah, um,
When Grogu builds a lightsaber, it's gonna be black. I'm calling it right now.
that's
It's,
racist.
it's gonna be it's gonna be the next dark saber.
That's racist. Um, Now, David, to stay on topic because we've been talking a little bit about the specifically the Mandalorian and the show and all that stuff. Um, Obviously, I know you can't take away Baby Yoda from the Mandalorian. They're one and the same. They work together. They are together. It's a father and son dynamic. Um, but correct me if I'm wrong. So it's not until season two that we actually find out what his name is.
Yeah.
But within that is season two when we see the flashback to Order 66, or is that season three? Season two, right?
It's either season 2 or the Book of Boba Fett.
I forgot that was an option.
Yeah.
Well,
Mandalorian season 2.5.
well, the biggest thing that I'm bringing up with this is that there's a lot of mystery surrounding the character of Yoda. We obviously have talked about the character. There's still a lot known about him, but there's a lot of mystery surrounding his background, a lot of things that he's done, and we are currently in the same boat with Grogu. Now, obviously, we don't know what species he is. We don't know where he came from, planet, anything like that, because that's the same questions we have about Yoda. But for the longest time, we had no idea, like 50 years, this is post Return of the Jedi, that's going to place him around, uh, he's going to be a little bit younger than, you know, characters like Old Ben.
Hmm.
Somewhere around that lane. So he's been around for a while, whether he's been able to do stuff or not. Um, which I just had a thought, and I want to pose this question to you, but I'll get to that in a second. But for the longest time, we didn't know what he was doing, where he was at, how he ended up where he's at. I'm not even sure if we completely understand how he got to where he was at the beginning of the Mandalorian season one. But we did get the flashback. We did get the flashback to see his rescue from the Jedi Temple, which we found out that he was there during Order 66. Um,
Hmm.
and there is probably still a good bit of mystery surrounding the character. Um, I feel like within Star Wars, while there might be a lot of questions with him, I'm not entirely sure how many people care anymore, just because of how many bombs Star Wars has dropped in the past couple years since Mandalorian season two. Like, there's a lot of hype around the Mandalorian, around Grogu, around all these characters, and then they just kept dropping bad shows.
Hmm. So, one thing that is kind of weird to me with Grogu is that he's 50 years old and still an infant. Like, I know it makes sense, a long-living species, he would be presumably be not mature as fast. That makes sense, but I feel like 50 is a little bit too long for him to still be an infant.
Yeah, well,
Um,
especially since what was it? Didn't Yoda say at some point that around 100 he was already training younglings?
yeah. So okay.
Before we get too far off on this tangent, I do want to ask you a question pertaining to this tangent, but like closer to where we're at now than where we're probably going to end up. Um, if so, they Jedi take children while they're young, so that they don't form attachments to their family and their parents and to other things, right? And they can train
Mhm.
them, indoctrinate them while they're young. With species like Yoda, do they have to take them as early? Could they take in Yoda, or could they take in Grogu at, say, 20 or 30, as opposed to a normal kid who they take at like 2 or 3?
Maybe it probably correlates more to developmental stage than it does actual age. So
Yeah.
probably. But okay, here's what I was gonna say.
Well,
So
unless, like we've theorized before, the only right answer would be that he actually was born in the Jedi Temple to Papa Yoda and Mama Yaddle.
okay. So okay. The average life expectancy for a human is 75. Well, for okay, a man is 75 years. This is real world I'm talking about. Average life expectancy for a man is 75 years. The average life expectancy for Yoda's species that we know of is 900. Yoda's the only example we have, so that's the average. And Yaddle doesn't count because it wasn't a natural death. Anyway, so if you take 900 and divide it by 75, that's 12. So Yoda species, if you go by this, ages 12 times slower than a human.
Mm-hmm.
So Grogu at age 50 would be, let's see, like between
Either
4
you're
and 5
thinking
years
really
old,
hard or you froze.
equivalent. He wouldn't still be an infant, is my point. So I don't know, I honestly don't know how this actually is supposed to work in that regards. Also, if you're talking about Yoda being, training Jedi when he was 100 years old, um, that would be like a 9-year-old equivalent. So again, it doesn't. I'm still confused about the lifespan of this species and the developmental rate because presumably from ages 50 to 100,
Yeah,
from ages 0 to 50,
confused.
basically no maturing happens, but ages 50 to 100, they go from being an infant to an adult. So I don't know. I don't understand the developmental rate of this species. Wesley, you're frozen. My internet says it's good, so what is going on? And now you're gone. Would you look at that?
I don't know what happened on if it was my end or your end. My end looked fine for the longest time.
Mine had
I
the
thought
full
you
green the whole time, so I don't know what.
I don't know. I just disconnected the call and came back just to see if that would work and it did. So, um I
I
also
don't know how
thought
much of
for the
that you caught.
longest I thought for the longest time that you were just thinking because the last thing I heard was that the Yoda species ages 12 times slower than humans. And you made the face of And so I thought you were just sitting there thinking or waiting to talk, the weeks to respond kind of a deal. And then you never did, and I was like, something's wrong here. So I waited a little while longer, realized that it was probably a connection issue. Didn't see you come back at any point, and decided I'd disconnect the call and come back. So I don't know what the issue was there, but anyways, we should be fine.
But no, I don't know how much that you caught, but basically what I was saying is that so this species ages 12 times slower than a human. So that would put Grogu like if equivalent to like just a little bit older than like a 4-year-old, like between 4 and 5,
Yeah,
which that's not an infant.
yeah. Well, even in the
And
show, that
also,
doesn't.
also, if Yoda was training Jedi when he was 100, that would have been like Yoda being a 9-year-old.
And Anakin couldn't make a master at 23 or 4,
So
which is
that's
crazy.
basically the equivalent of if little Annie was already training Jedi.
hmm Um, well, let me go ahead and throw this out at you for the infant thing. Um, I have a 5-month old, about to be a 6-month old. I don't know if she's still classified as an infant. She's not classified as a newborn. Now, toddler stage, I don't think comes in till around 2, close to 2. So I don't know if infant is basically just after newborn until they're a toddler, what that necessarily means. But I feel like they're out of the toddler stage at around, at least by 3 to 4. So he's well past being an infant. But that being said, well, two examples. I have a niece who's 3. Uh, Grogu is nowhere near as advanced as she is in what she does.
I
She can
mean, okay,
talk, and then I have
okay,
a I
like
have a I have a girl, um, who is about 6 months old. She seems a little bit closer to Grogu's capabilities with less of the intellectual thinking.
so Grogu can walk, which is
Yeah,
a big thing, but he can't talk. Now, from a lot of the things he does, there's kind of like okay, he's already understanding things going on in the world, but
yeah.
again, he still can't talk. Now, I don't know if that's something that's a slower developmental thing for the species. If, um,
I mean, they can't talk right
I mean,
in the end
I mean,
anyway.
obviously,
So,
yeah, I was about to say, obviously, Yoda wasn't even that good at talking to begin with, so, um, maybe that's why Grogu can't talk. It's because Yoda was the one trying to teach him how to.
but then Yaddle talks fine.
Yeah, that's so maybe Yaddle should have been in charge of teaching Grogu how to talk.
That's actually probably true. Um, Now, David, this has been something that I have not mentioned to you because I've forgotten, but I want to bring this up to you. So, talking about Grogu, so obviously Grogu is and has been since day one of The Mandalorian a very beloved character. You can't look into anything Star Wars related merchandise wise, um, and not find something with Baby Yoda's face on it. Like he is everywhere in anything Star Wars merch
Mm.
related. Um, I don't know where it is. It's probably up there. But Ellie has essentially a life size replica of Baby Yoda. I mean, it's about this big. but he's not big to begin with, and it's a little stuffed animal, um, about the same size as her. But that was given to us, and I think it's cute. I'm Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm trying to get her into Star Wars. Um, but I wanted to mention this to you because I remember what we were doing. Oh, I was looking for Sarah a birthday present. And so I was trying to find her, and I've talked to you about this. She's really big in the Lord of the Rings, so I was trying to get her, see if I could find any maybe Lord of the Rings Lego sets. She had talked about wanting some Legos. Um, and so I was just going out shopping, went to some toy stores. Well, I went to Target, and I was looking at the toys there, and they have a Star Wars section. David, I don't think you and I would survive today as kids with the toys that they have. The low quality of toys is insane. They are lightsabers, right? I understand that we were smaller at some point in our lives, but their lightsabers are literally this long. The ones that collapse, they're this long. There were two versions that I saw. One had an R2D2 handle, and one had a Vader handle. Those things looked like I could stand there and crush it in my hand without trying. They were the crappiest
So
little things ever.
I actually have some of the lightsabers that I grew up with. Let me grab. It's right in here in the closet. Let me grab them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You do that.
So I know they might not look to be the most, like they're not metal or anything. They look pretty movie accurate.
And
Obviously it's just the standard, plastic blade, which is not really that long. Still, the hilts
what's
look movie accurate. They're the right size,
yeah,
and
David,
you
basically
could,
basically if for what I saw in the store, that entire blade was the length of what's around nowadays and nowhere near the quality.
and again, these were the sets from, um, I believe they originally came out when Phantom Menace came out. Because there were three different hilts in this series. There was the Qui-Gon hilt. This, of course, was Obi-Wan's Padawan lightsaber. And then this, of course, it was Luke's lightsaber from the original trilogy, which also was, Anakin's. Even though we hadn't seen that yet. And then they also had, I believe at that point they only had the three blade colors, the blue, green, and red, because obviously we hadn't seen that yet in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But still, like 20 years ago, you could buy these. Like an actual, like, you know, movie accurate looking. I know, again, it's plastic, it's not chrome, but still pretty pretty close to being a movie accurate, you know,
And
representation
for
of what the
reference,
lightsaber looks like.
and for reference, okay, David, those are two lightsabers that you still have. I know that you and your brothers had a couple more. I had one. It was the Obi-Wan hilt with a green blade. Um, and I think Thomas probably had a couple. When we would get together, we would sword fight. And we
Hmm.
wouldn't just tap the swords. We would beat them against each other and beat each other with them and all that fun stuff. And as a minute ago you showed the blade. yes, it is worn out. If you were to see it in person, there'd be scuff marks all over the place. But that thing is still intact.
You can even
Like,
see part of it's the light, but you can even see all the like white marks on it from hitting it too hard. Now again,
but that is,
it's some of that was originally on the blade because it's not really the best like dye job or anything, but still,
yeah.
there's scuffs and stuff. But yeah, we would like not be gentle with these things. It's just yeah.
I I remember one time, David. I think I went out because we had made one Thanksgiving. We made we I mean specifically mostly your brothers, but we, you, me, and the guys made PVC pipe swords. Remember doing that? Well,
Mm,
I liked that idea, and I wanted to make some with a hilt. So I went to Lowe's. I got some. I went and got the little cross beam thing, and I glued them all together, right? And they worked well for a time. Well, I remember one time you and I were playing with them, and we were beating swords against each other. Well, I don't remember who it was, but one of us went to swing at the other one. When we got done with that swing, one of us didn't have a blade on the sword anymore because they had gone flying across the yard because it came loose from the little adapter,
mm.
flying legitimately flying across the yard. We were not gentle with these things. That's all I'm saying. David, I would guarantee you, and maybe one day we need to try this. I would guarantee you, the things that we did with toys growing up, that comes out a little bit wrong, but the things we did with toys growing up, how hard we were on them, today's toys wouldn't survive that. Like the swords, they wouldn't survive that. The um the remember that game we used to play with the cars where we'd sit on opposite sides of the room and we'd throw our cars at each other and whoever was
Oh, but
facing,
back yeah.
yeah. And you know, I don't think toys I don't think that obviously they don't make them like they used to. I understand that. But uh, this was a couple weeks ago, probably near the end of August, because Sarah's birthday is the 1st of September. Um, near the end of August, I did this, and I've been meaning to talk to you about how bad toys look nowadays. Specifically Star Wars, because that's what I came across. Another thing I wanted to mention. Uh, do you remember? You may not, so I'll tell you anyways. Thomas had a full blown. Actually, no, y'all did too, didn't you? A full-blown Darth Vader helmet. I remember y'all having the clone helmet, but y'all had a Vader
Mm.
helmet too, didn't you?
I seem to remember that. That was a long time ago, but I do seem to remember that.
Yeah. But anyways, these were full-blown actual put on your head helmet. And we're not talking like specifically collector's items here. These were toys for kids to play with. Like this wasn't something that's
Hmm.
supposed to sit up on a shelf or is supposed to be something that you have in a cosplay outfit. This was something that like was legitimately built for kids to play with.
But
Um,
I remember specifically with that clone helmet, that was probably that was Roberts. But
yeah.
that one was probably it might not have been, the best quality, but it was probably good enough where you could wear it as in a cosplay and get away with it.
Yeah, I mean it was nice, and it was also really cool to have playing around the yard and stuff like that. But anyways, these are full blown helmets, like back, front, everything. They have these little things you slap to the front of your face and have a little band strapped around the back of your neck or back of your head. That's all they have nowadays. On toy aisles, I'll say on toy aisles. It's like I understand companies are trying to cut costs wherever they can find it because they're cheap. But it's sad to see the decline of things like this because, you know, David, if I wanted to go out and buy a not just a good quality lightsaber, a good quality toy lightsaber, like Ellie when she's growing up, I might have to either spend a little bit of money to find something, or she's just gonna have to get the crap that is produced nowadays. You know?
or just honestly just buy something on eBay that's from like
Yeah.
early 2000s.
I I am not entirely sure where I might have lost mine, my lightsaber. But even if I had it, I'd only have one. And if I wanted to do anything with her, I'd have to, go find another one to play with. Um, but yeah, I mean eBay obviously there is a way that way. But it's like how long before some of these become collector's items? So David, hold on to those lightsabers. Not that you were ever going to sell them, but I want to hold on to them. Um, but yeah,
Oh,
it's like
I don't know how much those would be worth, but still,
you
I
never
do get your
you
point.
never know. You never know. You can sign them one day. Maybe they'll be worth something, a burger or
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
Anyway, um, but I believe the point you were originally making before we got off on this tangent was that the fact that like Grogu is nearly everywhere in Star Wars like merchandise.
Well, technically, actually, the point I was making was that Star Wars merchandise is crap nowadays, like Star Wars the franchise. I just used Grogu as a springboard to get where I wanted to go with that. But we can hop back to
Yeah.
Grogu.
So I remember when Mandalorian season 1 came out. Now I get they didn't want to release a bunch of stuff with Grogu because they didn't want to like you know they didn't want to get it out that this was a character in the show. They wanted to kind of keep it a secret.
Hmm.
But they didn't plan any merchandise with Baby Yoda when season 1 of The Mandalorian came out.
Yeah.
How dumb was that?
I mean,
Like,
David, we know Disney's
okay,
not
okay,
the
okay,
best at making plans,
true, true. But okay,
decisions.
look at Guardians Volume 2. That was that was just kind of a mediocre movie. Well, it's good, but it's not amazing. It's definitely not one of the like top Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But look at Baby Groot. There is
Yeah.
still merchandise and stuff from with Baby Groot, and this it's also another Disney property. And then you have that. I don't know why Disney
They had more.
didn't realize. And then they were also written and were recorded or were filming Mandalorian season 2 at this point, and when they realized, you know, oh, Baby Yoda is a lot more popular than we thought he was going to be, or Grogu is a lot more popular than we thought he was going to be, it was the thing of, oops, we already wrote him out. So that's what happened with the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah. Um. Well, you talked about how they didn't have any merchandise for Baby Yoda. Um, they had where they had more merchandise for the Porgs when they released that, which is insane. So that's not even a main character. I mean, obviously, I thought they were
The what are those things?
the chicken thingies that Chewbacca munches on while they're on the planet.
Oh yeah, you know what they ought to do is at Disney World they ought to you know how they have the turkey legs. They ought to do they ought to do rotisserie porgs.
There you go. I'm fully on board with this. I'm fully on board with never going to Disneyland to see if they have that or not. A couple years ago, no, you went with us. A couple years ago, our grandparents have a condo down in Florida that they get every year. And a couple years ago, all the cousins, bunch of the family went down, and my sisters and a couple of our other cousins wanted to go to Universal or go to Disneyland, and they decided to go to Universal for the day. And they were all so excited, and I had fun. I had fun going there. It was a good day. But it's a big thing for my sisters. They've talked about it that they really want to go to Disney World and like spend the week there or however long to get there all the stuff in. I don't really like I love Star Wars. I even like Marvel. I'm gonna say like because but I have no interest in going to a place like that. It's one, there's too many people. That's probably the biggest thing. Too many people.
See,
And it
I
costs a
honestly like.
lot of money.
Mm, I honestly like the idea of like you know Ren fairs, like role play stuff more than like going to amusement parks or even going to something like Comic Con.
Hmm.
If you want to go somewhere there's a lot of people, I even like the idea of that more than like uh Disney World, all the rides and stuff. I would honestly even I might even consider paying a little more if there was something like like very like like a Star Wars role play park where like
That would be cool.
you get into character, like you actually get into character, and there's not there are actors and stuff around,
Yeah.
but like you're also everyone in the park is in character pretty much.
But let's be honest, David. If there was a Star Wars roleplay park, we would work there.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I mean, that'd be the best job in the world. Get paid to pretend you're in Star Wars.
Hmm. And like so that goes back to that the like I said the Ren Fair thing.
Yeah. We what are we doing with our lives, David? We need to go pretend like we're in Star Wars. We'll just do it and see who follows. I
So
think we
what
should
you're
take
saying is we need to start a Star Wars fair that's like a Ren Fair where we go around pretending. Actually, there already are things like that. I'm pretty sure. Like what is it?
yeah,
The Isn't it like the 501st Legion is a thing? Like the cosplayers who
I think
like
so.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be fun to do too. Like go to conventions with a bunch of
Yes.
other people dressed as clones.
Yes. Well, speaking of like that, I mean, Star Wars fans are nuts anyways, but in The Mandalorian season 1, didn't they need extras for the
Yeah.
battalions that were coming in at the
So
end, and that was all homemade costumes? Or not homemade, but like people's actual personal costumes?
yeah, they ran out of the budget for the costumes, so they got the 501st Legion, like the real life cosplayer group that I'm talking about. They got
Yeah.
them to come in to be extras for stormtroopers because they already had all the armor.
Yeah.
And
That's who I want
any
fighting in the
and
next war.
Any Star Wars fan, especially ones who are passionate enough about it to actually have stormtrooper armor, would
Yeah.
kill for a chance to be an extra in a Star Wars project.
I mean, they almost did. I mean, you know how close Din Djarin was to dying?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Um, so David, I want to go ahead and say this so that we can head towards this. Um, Sarah texted me not too long ago and said I needed to be done by 5:20. Now, I bumped her back to about 5:30, but I probably have at most about 10 more minutes that I can do before I have to go. So do you want to go ahead and start wrapping up? I know it's going to be a shorter episode. I didn't plan on this, but I also didn't realize I was going to be this pressed for time.
Yeah. Um.
I mean, about 10 minutes, we'll hit about an hour. Not quite, but almost.
So let's see. In this talk, we talked a good bit about whatever we had in your what you call it you sent me earlier outline.
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about most of everything on there, except for you had a thing on here called or that's Grogu's future.
Hmm.
So what were you thinking with that?
Oh, I wasn't thinking at all with any of this. This is completely not my idea. But I guess it's more of like the posing the question of what do we expect to see out of Grogu heading forward, right? So we have, okay, Star Wars has taken a second to not do. The last thing we had came out was the Acolyte. For that, it was something else that I can't remember. But like what last year we got Ahsoka, and that was last September, right? Somewhere around there,
Last fall, yeah.
last fall. And what earlier that year did we get season 3 of The Mandalorian, or was it the year before that?
I think it was the year before that. I want to say.
But one way or another, it's been a second since we've really seen Grogu as a character.
Hmm.
Now,
Yep.
from reports and talks, apparently there's going to be a combination of a lot of different characters that we've seen from this time frame in the Thrawn trilogy. Obviously, with the way that they're going about doing the Thrawn trilogy, it's not going to be exact to what we're talking about when we go through the books. But so essentially there's going to be new characters, less of characters from the original trilogy, I would assume, um, and probably more characters like who we know now, like Ezra, Din Djarin, Ahsoka. Maybe not Ahsoka, depending on what's going on with them being in this other galaxy. But anyways, the point being, Grogu. Grogu obviously was a character that was set up to point us to the sequels
Mm.
because of the cloning and all that stuff. But that aside, he is still a character in Star Wars. So, what is the future of this character? When will we see him again? What kind of role will he be playing in? Even to that point, me mentioning the sequels, where is Grogu in the sequels? You know, obviously, this is a character that was created after they were made. But in the actual universe, where is he at? What's he doing? So, what is this future? What does the future of the character hold? We're going to learn more about him. What's the next project? Are we going to see him in Thrawn? Kind of those ideas is kind of what I was getting at with what's the future of this character. You know, he is a beloved Star Wars character. He has been obviously all over the place with merchandise. People can't get enough of him. People who don't even care about Star Wars love Baby Yoda. He is everywhere. So it's kind of the idea of like you can't just they're not going to kill him off, and they can't really just get rid of him. So, it's been a while since we've seen anything from him. What are we going to get?
Well, I think the obvious answer with this is just, he's gonna stay on Mandalore with Din. He's gonna become an actual Mandalorian. But the question with that raises is if we have a restored Mandalore now on this timeline, or sorry, in this time period, why were they just kind of, standing back
Not a,
with the whole first order thing? And
yeah, a lot of
because,
unanswered questions that Dave Filoni is going to have to take up.
mm,
But,
because presumably they're going
yeah,
to get involved with Heir to the Empire, and as much as I hate to say it, when they do this with Heir to the Empire in the Disney Star Wars, they may be able to make a way where it doesn't, but it's probably going to have to result in the birth of the First Order.
Probably. I have a feeling that for them to keep things with the timeline that they've put up, the Heir to the Empire, the Thrawn trilogy is probably going to end pretty disastrously, and I mean that as in the Star Wars universe and in the real world.
If they had
They've
wanted to, if Disney had actually wanted to do this story from the beginning, it would have made it a lot better. Now,
I
granted, the story is set like, 5 years after the books, I mean, are set, 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and obviously if Disney wanted to make, in 2015 make movies based off those books, they would still have to adjust a decent amount of stuff. But
yeah. I mean that is hard doing it with the original cast because they're old now and budgets and all that stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean the thing is I feel like them getting around the original cast is a lot easier than them getting around the constraints they put on themselves with the sequel trilogy. So that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting to see how they deal with that. I also wonder how the world between worlds might affect something like this. I don't want Star Wars to get too heavy into that, and I'm looking at your face and seeing that you don't either. But there might
so,
be a world in
I've
which we can get rid of some of this.
yeah, I've heard people talking about, oh, they can use the world between worlds to, decanonize the sequel trilogy and make that like a parallel universe or whatever. Star Wars has never done that. They've never
They,
done the, multiverse thing. They've shied away from time travel. They've gotten close to it with the world between worlds thing with Ezra saving Ahsoka, but it's still not exactly like, going to the future or going to the past and changing things.
yeah.
But
You also have to think about this. Star Wars has never done it, but Star Wars is owned by Disney.
mhm.
Disney has.
Do you remember in Parks and Rec the filibuster episode where there
Yep.
was the guy who was like doing the
We
filibuster
actually
when
just
Leslie
watched
was in
it.
the yeah. So the irony in that is the fact that, well, like at the time, because that was around when Disney bought Star Wars, I think. Um,
Yeah, he was pitching his idea to J.J. Abrams for what the sequel trilogy should be.
yeah. Um, and he mentions like, you know, towards the end of it, he's like, and this would give us our connection to the Marvel universe. And the scary part about that is Disney could actually do that if they wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a comforting thought.
At some point we might see Fortnite in a movie. You know, having
I wouldn't be surprised.
having Luke Skywalker, Captain America, and Peter Griffin fighting alongside each other. It because Disney owns all three of those characters.
That's also a scary thought.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, David, I don't mean to rush too terribly much. Um, and I love dogging on Disney because we don't do it enough. But uh, I do need to get. I keep smacking my mic out of the way. I probably do need to get going. I would prefer not to get fussed at, incur the wrath of my wife. Um,
Mhm.
you'll understand one day. You're young whippersnapper. I'm kidding. Uh, but
You can't go from calling me old to calling me a young whippersnapper.
I can do whatever I want. You can't tell me. Anyways,
Yeah, that's what Sarah's
but
for.
shut up. But I feel like for the most part we kind of covered. I mean, there's a lot that can be talked about with Yoda, baby Yoda, Yoda's baby. Let's say it that way. It seems more fitting. But I feel like we brushed over the main topics and points within the character. Um, you know, there is a lot of uncertainty going forward with where, when, and how are we going to see the character again. Like you said, are we going to is he going to fade away on Mandalore with Din Djarin? And if that's the case, why is Din Djarin not helping out with more in the universe? Because he seems like the kind of person that would help, especially with his
Mhm.
connections to the original cast in Star Wars. He's made connections, he's made friends, he's made acquaintances. They would go to him for help. They would go to Mandalore for help. So where are they through all this? There's a lot of questions to be asked, there's a lot of questions to be answered. We don't have the time nor the money, but Disney does, and they're gonna squander both. So I guess we'll get what we get.
Yeah, I
Any
guess.
final thoughts? Any final thoughts on the character?
Um, there's a lot they could do with it. Do with Grogu. They're 100% going to screw it up. I'm done with giving Disney the benefit of the doubt. Um,
I give Jon Favreau the benefit of the doubt.
but from what? Okay, I'll give Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni the benefit of the doubt, but not Disney.
I, I, I'm almost done giving Dave Filoni the benefit of the doubt. Jon Favreau hasn't screwed up as much,
Yeah.
but I'm
Anyway,
but Disney obviously is the overlord, so you know.
yeah. So I don't know. I know we've talked about it. I don't know how much. Even though Dave Filoni is technically the creative head of Lucasfilm, I don't know how much power he actually has. Um,
Yes,
which if he doesn't have that much power, then
it's
it's all reflecting very badly on him because everyone
yeah,
thinks he does.
yeah. Well, and
So,
that's the thing too. I don't want to go too much on this tangent, but that is the thing too. Is he will take the heat for it, whether it's his fault or not. And
mm,
Disney's going to keep putting. And see, if Disney is the only fault to it, whether or not people actually blame Dave Filoni or not, Disney's going to keep firing and hiring people because they're going to blame it on that person, whoever's in that position, as
mm,
opposed to taking accountability for it themselves. But anyways,
yeah,
enough dogging on Disney, enough talking into a mic, enough staring at a screen. All right, go outside, you people.
go touch
You
grass.
wretched, you wretched hive of scum and villainy. Go touch some sand, bake in the
I don't
sun
like
a little bit.
sand.
It's coarse and it's rough and it gets everywhere. But anyways, it's neither here nor there.
Anyways, go ahead and hit us on the
With that,
outro, Wesley. I feel like we're done.
we are done. With that, flying. With that, this has been an episode of X-Wing Radio. We hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you liked about it. Let us know what you didn't like. And as always, be sure to join us next week here, same time, same place. We will be talking about Dark Force Rising. This is next book in the Thrawn trilogy. So if you're into that, check us out next week. We'll see you then.
Bye.